Howdy y'all, Luke here. After my last video where I showed you how to install a shouldered pre-fit onto an action, I wanted to cover the next step, which is trigger install. Installing a trigger onto a bolt action rifle is a very simple process. It's made even easier by many of today's actions using a trigger hanger system. Now, if you are going to be installing a trigger into an action that uses a trigger hanger system, all you are going to need is a properly sized bit for your screw, 8 inch-pounds torque wrench, and some blue Loctite. If you are installing a trigger into a traditional Remington 700 or other bolt action system, I'll probably cover that in another video, but it's as simple as pushing 2 pins through the trigger in action. So let's get into these supplies and why we need. Installing a trigger into an action that uses a trigger hanger system requires very little in the way of tools. You'll need an inch-pounds torque wrench, the properly sized bit for your trigger hanger screw, and then you'll need blue Loctite. Here we have our trigger pins, our trigger hanger screw, and our trigger hanger. First thing I like to do is take the trigger hanger, insert it into the action, and make sure I'm installing it in the correct direction. Then I'm going to take the trigger, insert it into the hanger, lining up these holes. What I've found, the easiest way to do this is to take a punch, and that really helps you get those holes lined up. I always start with the first one. Now, with some triggers, I've found that you can just push these in by hand, but with the Aerosolus, I've found they require a bit of love from a hammer. Now our rear pin, this one's always a little bit more hassle to drive in properly as your safety is in the way. So we obviously want to be careful there and make sure that we do not damage the safety. You can use a punch here, but I've found careful light taps with a hammer will do that. So there you see, we have both trigger pins flush and the trigger is now connected to the trigger hanger. Next step is to install the whole system into the action. It's time for the screw. We are going to put a small drop of blue Loctite on that screw. And then we are going to place the hanger inside of the action, like so. And the screw is going to go right there in the rear. And this will be different on various models, but it's a pretty similar system for all of them. Then we're simply going to take our torque wrench and screw that in. Boom, torque to 12 inch-pounds. Our trigger is now installed in the barreled action, and it's time to check for safety. Now that we have the trigger properly installed in the barreled action, the first thing we want to do is check it for safety. So we're going to insert the bolt, and then all I'm going to do is dry fire it a few times, make sure the trigger works as normal. Then we're going to flip the safety on, try to fire it. It should not go off. If it does, we have a problem. And then we're going to take a rubber mallet and give it a few smacks, both on safe and on fire, and make sure that it does not go off. So we have now tested the safety of our trigger, and we are ready to keep moving along with this rifle build. We are making progress. In this series, we started off with a bunch of parts, and today we installed the trigger into our action. We now have a complete barreled action with a trigger installed, and our next video is going to show you how to install this into a stock or chassis. If you have any questions about putting together a bolt gun, whether that's what parts to buy or how to do something, please don't hesitate to reach out.